The peace of Christ be with you. This is a midweek reflection for Third Reformed on September 30th, at the end of another month in this strangest of years, 2020. I've been talking a lot throughout these midweek reflections and in Sunday messages and in conversations with people about the need to maintain healthy boundaries around the inputs in our lives. I was saying again this Sunday morning, if you tuned in or were at outdoor worship, there's times where I kind of look longingly at, my grandfather's experience of a daily newspaper, or even my parents' experience when I was growing up of the evening nightly news, a half an hour of local broadcast, a half an hour of national broadcast news. And that was kind of the limit of where that input came from. Even in the last decade, we have evolved into such a different place with our highly connected online world, where now, if you're not intentional about doing otherwise, you can easily fall into this pattern of having every minute, every hour of your day filled with a relentless stream of noise, either through scrolling social media posts, of watching video commentaries, listening to podcasts, reading stories, reading op-ed pieces, reading commentary on the opinion pieces of others. It takes a conscious decision to set some parameters around how much you let all of that press in on you. And I think there's a pretty direct correlation between how much you expose yourself to those inputs and how much anxiety, fear, and uncertainty you carry about what's happening in the world around you. We are absolutely living in a time of, I know this word is so tired right now, but unprecedented levels of anxiety and animosity. It's a noisy, static-filled, angry space that we find ourselves in as a nation right now. And I think that it's important to remain engaged and connected to know what's going on, but to do so in a way that keeps us sane. That's what I was saying this past Sunday morning. So as people of faith, I think to be responsible with our own emotional, mental, and spiritual health and well-being, we need to break ourselves out of some of these patterns of just constant subjection to whatever the daily news cycle is churning out. That means listening not just to hot take voices on the issue of the day, but listening to some deeper voices that have some lasting, staying power. Of course, as Christians, the first place you go to that is Scripture. I highly encourage people to turn especially to the Psalms, as well as the Gospels and the words of Jesus himself, to remain grounded in those timeless anchoring truths and promises. It also, though, means listening to the voices of other people of faith who help us see more clearly and live more fully into the depth of the beauty and the promises of who God is. For me, one of those people, as it is for a lot of folks, is Henri Nouwen. I grabbed this book, Life of the Beloved, which has a subtitle of Spiritual Living in a Secular World, off the shelf today. I have some little tags marking out places from years ago when I used this book to outline a weekend retreat with consistory and staff at the last congregation where I served. And I turned to one of those tabs in the chapter on blessing, recognizing ourselves as recipients of God's words of blessing. And Nouwen talks about how often the world can seem like an accursed place. You look at wildfires, natural disasters, violence, instability, racism, these things that mark our world and keep people from flourishing fully. and to recognize that increasingly in our world that sense of accursedness can even come home on us as more and more animosity gets worked out publicly these days, especially again in social media spaces. And he talks about the hard work it takes to really listen and hear and trust and live out of God's words of blessing when so much can feel so wrong around you. Love to read a section of that. This is from page 75 on my copy of Life of the Beloved. And Nouwen says, still I say to you, as the beloved child of God, you are blessed. Good words are being spoken to you and about you, words that tell the truth. The curses, noisy, boisterous, loudmouthed as they may be, do not tell the truth. They are lies, lies easy to believe, but lies nonetheless. Well, if the blessing speaks the truth and the curse speaks lies about who you and I are, we are faced with a very concrete question. How do you hear and claim the blessing? If the fact of our blessedness is not just a sentiment, but a truth that shapes our daily lives, we must be able to see and experience this blessing in an unambiguous way. Let me offer you 2 suggestions for claiming that blessedness from God. These have to do with prayer and presence. So first of all, prayer. For me personally, prayer becomes more and more a way to listen to the blessing. I have read and written much about prayer, but when I go to a quiet place to pray, I realize that although I have a tendency to say many things to God, the real work of prayer is to become silent and to listen to the voice that says good things about me. This might sound self-indulgent, but in practice it is a hard discipline. I am so afraid of being cursed, of hearing that I am no good or not good enough, that I quickly give in to the temptation to start talking and to keep talking in order to control my fears, to gently push aside and silence the many voices that question my goodness, and to trust that I will hear a voice of blessing. Well, that demands real effort. Have you ever tried to spend a whole hour doing nothing but listening to the voice that dwells deep in your heart? When there is no radio to listen to, no TV to watch, no book to read, no person to talk to, no project to finish, no phone call to make, how does that make you feel? Often it does no more than make us so aware of how much there is still to do that we haven't yet done, that we decide to leave that fearful silence and go back to work. It is not easy to enter into the silence and reach beyond the many boisterous and demanding voices of our world, and to discover there the small, intimate voice saying, "You are my beloved child, and on you my favor rests." Still, if we dare to embrace our solitude and befriend our silence, we will come to know that voice. So it's my encouragement to you with the words of Brother Nouwen today, to give yourself to that hard work of prayer, to befriend your silence, to lean into your solitude, and to really come to hear and trust that voice of God, which truly does look at you and say, "You are my beloved child, on you my favor rests."